Chromebooks were first introduced to schools in the US in 2011 as a pilot program from Google. The next year, Chromebooks became easier for school leaders to manage and facilitate exams and for students to share, with the introduction of kiosk and manage guest mode in Google Admin Console. Chromebooks became available to schools in Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Ireland, and the Netherlands in 2013. By 2014, Chromebooks were the #1 best-selling mobile computing device for education in the United States and were produced by all major device manufacturers. In 2016, Chromebooks were being used by over 20 million students and educators around the world. The first Chromebook tablet was introduced in 2017. And the following year, teachers found innovative ways to administer quizzes and tests using Google Workspace for Education. With the launch of locked mode in Google Forms only on managed Chromebooks, teachers saw full control over their assessments, while students were kept focused and free of distractions. In 2019, the Chromebook App Hub launched, becoming the go-to destination for educators looking for apps and lesson ideas. And by 2020, as the world transitioned to remote learning, 40 million students and educators were relying on Chromebooks for school every day. In the last 6 months, Chromebooks have been the #1 device globally in K-12 education and have made their way to classrooms around the globe, giving teachers and students limitless possibilities for teaching and learning.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Chromebook Masterclass for beginners. I see some of you have already introduced yourselves in the chat, so welcome. And I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Jess Marsh. I work with Canopy as a Google Certified Innovator, and I'm joined today by Andy Caffrey.
Hi, everybody. I'm also a Google Certified Innovator and Trainer, and great to see everyone in the chat. Shall we get started, Jess?
Yeah. So happy birthday, Chromebook. We've been celebrating already this week, and the celebrations will continue. So we'd love to know, as a little way to celebrate all of the Chromebooks that you've used in the last 10 years, will you tell us what was your favorite one, or what is your favorite one that you're using? Andy,
or maybe it's just the Chromebook you're using right now. If you, people may be joining us with their first Chromebooks on the call. I've had a Chromebook for a lot of the last 10 years. I started off with a Samsung C303, which was a very shiny, very rounded Chromebook. That was my first Chromebook. Then I had a fancy one that flipped over, one of the flip devices that you could flip over and turn into a tablet. I had one of those. And then about 6 years ago, I got the Chromebook I've got now, which is my Chromebook Pixel. And I really like the one I've got now, so I'm quite happy with the one I've got. But it's always great to see lots of different Chromebooks, lots of different styles. Some people prefer to use a pen and a stylus, and other people just want the simple clamshell with the keyboard. So great to see everyone with us. But if you want to let us know what Chromebooks you've got or what you're using in the chat, feel free to pop that in. What about yourself, Jess?
Yeah, I love my Acer Spin, which, as you said, has that flip around, can be a tablet feature too. So I'm not breaking it when I do that. And I know a lot of teachers and students love that as well, being able to shift and use it both as a laptop and a tablet.
Yeah, and there's a few coming in the chat as well. Phil's saying he loves the Lenovo 100E and using an Acer Split 343. But today's on a Chromebox, so it's a very different sort of device. Chromebox is a little, well, as the name suggests, is a little box that you plug into a monitor and a keyboard, and effectively gives that Chrome experience on a desktop environment. I'm seeing lots of schools flipping computer rooms over to Chromeboxes at the moment. A few others coming in. Let's have a look. Lee's got the Acer C733. I wish we should give them better names than numbers. And we've got Caroline, who's using the Lenovo Chromebook S330. So lots of different Chromebooks that people are using coming in today.
Yes,
great to see that in the chat.
So,
an interesting fact, Jess. Interesting fact, of course. Today's webinar, we're delivering totally from Chromebooks as we do with all our webinars. So we're using all of us, myself, Jess, Rachel, who manages our visuals are all working on Chromebooks today.
Yeah, wonderful. So at any time throughout the session, feel free to use that chat to pop in questions. These are the main sections that we will cover today, starting with your hardware, the device of the keyboard, trackpad, and then we'll go into the software, the files in your Chromebook, your apps, and some accessibility features. So starting off with the big question, really, Andy. So we know that they've been around for 10 years now, but what exactly is a Chromebook?
So as people have probably discovered, and all the people in the chat who are on different sorts of devices, a Chromebook is a different sort of device. And there's some key features that we see on Chromebooks, regardless of which make and model you're using. In reality, the experiences are all very similar. And so the key features are, firstly, the quick startup. So when you press power button on a Chromebook, the machine should be started up and running within 8 seconds. So that's a really fast startup time. And actually, one of the first things I remember back to my time teaching with Chromebooks, because I taught for a number of years with the Chromebook as my main device, was the fact that I used to move classrooms every lesson. And so the big difference for me when I first got my first Chromebook was that ability to go into a lesson and my device was on, whereas previously I'd go into a lesson and 5 minutes later I was still looking at sort of startup pages. So the quick startup is a key feature. They run an operating system called Chrome OS. And so it's a system that's based around the Chrome browser. And thinking about most of the work that we do today is online on the internet. That's one of the reasons why the Chromebooks have grown in that rate of popularity, because they are machines that are built for the web. As a result of the way they run the Chrome OS system in separate windows, they're a secure machine. We don't need to put antivirus software on them, and they've got security built in into their inherent design. And because of the nature of them and the design of them, they have a long battery life. So we're talking on a new model, 10 to 12 hours per day battery life. So a student using it at school is going to get through the school day without the need to go and plug in halfway through the day. So those are some of the key features.
Battery life, always important with the device. So in the beginning stages, of course, like you said, some people might just be starting off on their Chromebook journey with a brand new Chromebook. So let's go into how we sign into them.
Yeah, so firstly, when you first power up the Chromebook for the very first time, you get to a sign-in page that looks a bit like this. And we need to sign into a Chromebook with a Google account. That could be a Gmail account, or most likely, if you weren't using it in a school, it's your Google Workspace for Education account. So usually your school, email, and password. Once you've signed in once, the sign-in page will change or look differently, and often it will remember who you are. So your picture will be there, and your name will be there, and just revert to putting your password in to sign into the Chromebook. On the bottom left-hand corner, down the bottom there, we can see that we've also got some other buttons. So sometimes on a Chromebook, you will have the option to add person, which means add more users. So if you've got a Chromebook at home and you've got 2 or 3 family members, you can have them on that page. And then the other option, which you may or may not have, is Browser's Guest. Browser's Guest allows you to go into a Chromebook without having to use a Google username and password. It effectively takes you to the web, so you can use it for browsing the internet. The bulk of schools, for very obvious security and safety reasons, turn off guest mode. And so they have their Chromebooks so that we know we want students signing in. We want to be able to control the device, and so we remove guest mode. So on a Chromebook you buy in the shops, you'll see Browser's Guest. Often on school managed devices, you won't.
Good to know. And again, if you have any questions about anything, please put them in the YouTube chat. But otherwise, we'll give you an opportunity to type in an answer as well this time. So there's something special about Chromebooks. Well, many special things, but we'd like you to take a look at your Chromebook that you're using, or if you need a keyboard here, we'll show you one, and tell us what's different about the Chromebook keyboard. What's special about the keyboard of Chromebooks? And while there are many different types of Chromebooks, they do all have this similar keyboard.
Yeah, so Google decide the specification for Chromebooks, and so they say to the manufacturers of the Chromebooks, this is what your device keyboard needs to look like. And so most Chromebooks all follow the same keyboard pattern, which looks like on the screen. But it'd be interesting to see if anyone in the chat can can and let us know what is different about that keyboard compared to maybe a standard QWERTY keyboard. And I'm going to be honest here. I used my Chromebook for about 4 years, and it was only when I was actually on a training course that I spotted one of the biggest differences that I just not at all been oblivious to over the years. And so people are suggesting things. Phil has come up in the chat, and he's mentioned
the any key or the search key. Yeah. We were going to talk about. Well done, Phil.
Yeah, so on the left-hand side, where we might have previously seen a caps lock key on a traditional keyboard, there is the search key. Mentioned that. Caroline's mentioned there's no delete button. So we have a backspace, but no delete. So we've still got the backspace for removing characters, but the DL, which would be, trying to remember where that was on my old computer.
Top right,
I think. They'll be there. So that's a good mention. Janet has mentioned function buttons missing. So across the top on a standard keyboard, you might see F1, F2. We've got specific action buttons on a Chromebook. We'll talk about those in a little bit as well. And then the main one, which no one got still, and the one that I didn't spot for years of using Chromebooks was this. Chromebooks keyboards are in lowercase. So the letters on Chromebook keyboards, if we look at the one on the screen there, Q, W, E, R, T, etc., are all written in lowercase writing, whereas on a sort of standard keyboard, they tend to be capital letters. And there's some evidence to suggest that for our students, that's easier for them, who are used to looking at writing and looking at lowercase. And so Chromebooks were originally designed for use in education. And so some of that research had pumped into how they wanted that keyboard to look in the first place. So the lowercase letters on the keyboard is probably the biggest difference. But let's go and look at some of those keys in a bit more detail. Shall we, Jess?
Yeah, there's a video for this.
So over on the left-hand side, and I think most people have mentioned this already, we've got the search key. And so the search key, what that does is it brings up the search menu, and it then allows you to search the web. So initially it gives you the search bar, and from that point you can do a device search or a web search at that point. Because if you think about what a lot of people, we talked about Chromebooks being designed for web, and of course the starting point for a lot of web is search, and so that's why search is over there.
And Andy, what if we don't want it to work that way? Is there a way to?
Okay, so yeah, if we share my screen in, and I see we've got a question actually in the chat about this. So
how we get
come in there? Yeah, so there is that thing, isn't it? Do you want the search key? You don't have to have the search key if you don't want to. So this is my Chromebook screen here on the computer, and I'm just loading up the side here. I'm just going into my settings area, and when you come into settings, excuse me, just grab settings so you can see it. When you come into settings here, you have some options should you want to change what the keys do. So if I go and type in keyboard to find what the different keys are here, I can go to my keyboard settings. So I went over to the bottom right hand side, I went to keyboard and keyboard settings. And as you can see, I've got my search key set to search. So it's going to perform that search operation. So when I press my search key, the moment the bottom bar comes up, it performs the search. There it is down there. If I really am a fan of caps lock, and maybe you're like, no, I would much rather, maybe Margaret, who's in the chat, who asked about this, she's like, I don't want a search key, I want a caps lock key. Well, we can just change that key there back to caps lock. Or anything else we might want it to do. We could have other things as well. One of the interesting choices recently is you can change the search key to go straight to the Google Assistant, which means it will take the audio input like we would if we ask Google a question. So you can change what that search key does. So if you're really missing caps lock, pop it back. To be honest, I've got used to the search. I find the search far more useful than caps lock. And so there's that. And again, you can also change Control, Alt, Escape, the backspace key, if there's a caps lock machine there, and various other ones as well. So there are a range of ways you can change what the keys do, should you want to be able to change those keyboards. And that's in the settings area under device and keyboards. So I hope that was useful. Shall we look at some other keys, Jess?
Thank you, Andy. So the function keys were already mentioned. People saw that those aren't quite the same, or what we called the top row or the top bar. Can you go through those with us, please?
Yeah, so we said earlier that the device is designed really for internet and for the modern use of internet. So the keys are focused around that. So escape is still there, top left-hand side, brings out of a window or brings out of a presentation. Next to that, we have a forward and back key. So if we're browsing the internet, we've gone forward, we can go forward and back using those keys there instead of using the buttons at the top of the browser. And then to the right of that is the refresh key, reloads the page. So when you're watching something, you want to reload a web page, you can press the refresh key to do that. So that's those first keys that are really internet focused. Then we have a Windows key. And so the first one, it just shows the windows that are open. And the second one to the right of it, select all windows. That shows all our windows. We can move between different programs. Maybe we've got two things open. Maybe we've got some Google Slides open. We've got some the website open. We can move between the two with those buttons there. Then we have brightness. So brightness up and down, and volume. So volume up and down. And then finally, the power button is usually on most Chromebooks top right. Not every Chromebook has the power key there. Some have it on the side. But most Chromebooks have a power key there as well, top right. So those are our function keys at the top of the page.
Great. And I know this is a commonly asked thing when we're using Chromebooks in education. Both students and teachers want to know, how do I take a screenshot? And I believe we have a video for this one.
Yeah, so it's control and the window selection button takes a full screenshot of the full page. So if you're on a page, you want a screenshot to do that, that's those keys. But sometimes we don't want a full screenshot. We just want a part of a screen. Maybe we're cropping some images for some slides, working with students, trying to get little images of things. And so this is the partial screenshot button. Control, Shift, and the window selection key. So remember, it's just Control and the window selection key for the whole page. For part of the page, Control, Shift, and the window selection key, and then you can select the area you want. And I'm about to show that on my device, but before we do, those are the keys for selecting an area of the screen.
Yeah, so as you are going to share in your device in a minute also, Andy, can you tell us both about that partial screen capture, and what's coming out now is the screen recording feature?
Yeah, so it's probably at this point should mention that Chromebooks are always improving and always updating. And one thing people who are using Chromebooks may have seen, sometimes you'll restart your Chromebook and it will have updated automatically. So we don't have to download updates. That happens in the background, and the devices over time they slowly improve and slowly update. And so there is a new feature that's coming out to Chromebooks, and this hasn't rolled out yet. So this is a feature that's coming soon. So by the time you get used to using your Chromebook in the next few months, this will probably be live on your Chromebooks. But it's coming out to Chromebooks to enable us not only to take static screenshots, but also to be able to take recordings of the screen. So Screen Recorder is rolling out as a new feature onto Chromebooks. If you want to try it out early, if you really want to sort of try something that hasn't yet been launched, Google allow people to do that by turning it on. And so there is a link there on the screen, which is Chrome / flags. And you can then turn on something called screen capture. So if you want to get early access, it's possible now to get early access to the screen recorder. I'll just share my screen in and I'll show you what that looks like because I've turned it on. So I've clicked that link and pressed enable. So I'll take you through that step first. If I just open a window up. Let me open a new window. So I've gone to Chrome flags, as we said. And Chrome flags is where our it's where any sort of features that are still, as it says here, it's where any features that, as it describes, are still experimental live. Make that a little bit bigger. And so these are where you can turn on features. And you see, screen capture test is still a demo feature. So if you want to use it, you can turn it on here. Go to Chrome flags, find screen capture test, turn it on. It is an experimental feature at this point. It hasn't rolled out as a main feature yet. It will roll out in the coming months as a main feature. So now I've got it turned on. I can use my keyboard shortcut that we've just learned to take a screenshot. I'm going to press Control Shift in the Windows selection key to do my screenshot. And that then tells me to drag an area that I'd like to capture. So let's imagine I do this. I drag my area to capture my screen. I'm going to capture this little picture here. And as you see at the bottom, I then have a little menu bar now, and that's because I've enabled the new feature. I've got this option. So I can either do a screenshot, take a static image, and to the right of that, with this little slider, I can also take a video. So it says video capture instead. So I got the choice, once I'm getting my screen capture, what I want to do. And again, once I then press the key to record, it does a little 3, 2, 1 countdown. And it's now recording away that little window there. It's recording a little video of my screen. So that's the new screen capture piece. And then what happens is that's saved in the files area. We'll talk about files later, but those little recordings, whether you capture a static screenshot or whether you capture a recording, they just go into your files area for you to use. So new feature coming soon, screen recording. Jess.
Thank you for sharing that. And here's the link one more time in case you want to try that out yourself. And then the last piece of our first section about our kind of hardware is how do we use the trackpad? So it's intuitive, and Andy will explain the basics now.
I think probably even before I mention the trackpad, I probably should say, I'll be very honest at this point. When I got my first Chromebook, I wasn't really into trackpads. So I got a works with Chromebook mouse. Any mouse works with Chromebooks, but some of them have got works with Chromebook on. That's useful. And I plugged the mouse into the USB port, and I used to initially use the mouse because I was a bit of a mouse person. That's the way I sort of used it. And then over time, I think particularly as I started moving around, and you not want to carry a mouse around with you as well. I think I just over time got more used to using the trackpad, and now I'm sort of converted. Now I'm a trackpad user. So it's fairly obvious that we can click our finger on there and we can move the mouse around. That's the first thing we could do. Secondly, we get asked this a lot. How do you right click? So I understand how to click, which one click. How do I do a right click feature? So to right click, it's 2 fingers click together on the trackpad, and that performs the right click motion that we normally see. When I'm working with students, I often describe that as a bunny ears click. So when you push 2 fingers and you click down, like a bunny ears, and I just click like that, and then that's a way of right clicking. There's some other things we can do with our finger movements as well. So Jess has just clicked onto this one. So if we have 2 fingers on the trackpad and we push up or pull down, it scrolls our window up and down. So if you're on the internet on a big long web page and you use 2 fingers, instead of having to go to the scroll bar with your mouse and move the scroll bar, it moves the window for you. So it just makes it easier to move up and down. And I think we've got a little video, haven't we, about how to move between pages.
Oh, no.
So that's using the 2 fingers there to left and right. When you're on the internet, you can use them to load forward and back. So we could use the forward and back keys at the top, but we could also use the 2 fingers to go left and right. Yeah, and so hopefully that gives us a good understanding of the keyboard.
Super. So that was, the keyboard and trackpad, kind of the hardware piece. And we'll go on to our next section after we give everyone an opportunity to ask questions in the chat. And I know lots of people have been interested in knowing about shortcuts Andy, do you have a favorite keyboard shortcut?
Oh, I would have probably gone for some of the screenshot ones, to be fair, in terms of keyboard shortcuts, because I use the most often. I think probably those might be the ones.
Yeah, or if you don't have any questions and want to share your favorite shortcut, feel free to do that in the chat as well. Or just all right, and we can always come back to questions if we don't have any questions on this section. That's great, and we can start with the next section. So now, as we're getting into the software of our Chromebook, how can we work with files on our Chromebooks, Andy?
Okay, so if we I'll just share my screen again. Everybody on their Chromebook would have an icon for the files area on their Chromebook. I've got mine down on the bottom bar here. It's pinned to my bottom bar. It's that little blue folder. Some of you might not have that there, so you might need to go into your little launcher area here to see all your little apps. And again, you probably have a files somewhere in there. There'll be a files folder you can use. So click on the files area, and it brings up your files window. Now, this is where, when you are using your Chromebook, this is where your files go. They get, whether you're downloading something, and they are there in this area here. So these are the files in the My Files area on my Chromebook. And I can also access Google Drive in this area, because obviously you've signed in with a Google account, so you're probably using Google Drive heavily. So again, Google Drive. And if I've got an external thing, so I happen to have an SD card plugged in right now in my Chromebook from a camera, I could have that here as well. So that's where I find my files. And obviously I can go to downloads if I'm looking for a download. What I do find useful actually is often when I'm going to my files, I know sort of what I'm looking for. So at the top here, there's a few different variations that are going to search my files. So recent, fairly obviously shows things I've been on recently, or I can go to audio, images or videos. And again, what it's doing is just filtering to show just a particular file type, particular one I might be on. Obviously, when I go to recent here, I can see lots of different things I've been on recently. Double click them, it's going to open them, but you can also just press the pick one of them. I'll go for this image here, press the space bar, and it just opens a little preview up of what that looks like. So instead of me having to fully open that, I can just press the space bar on a file, and again it's sort of telling me the size of the file. This is a GIF of a little rabbit. I'm not sure why I've got this, but GIF of a rabbit and the size of it and so on. So within the files area, I can find out a little bit about my files as well when I'm doing that there. Of course, I can also use this to move things around. So if I want that file in my Google Drive or in my downloads area, or into obviously with Google Drive, I could start to look into my files and my shared drives. I could start to move that around that way by simply clicking it and dragging it and moving it around. And that's the files area on Chromebooks.
Okay.
Yes.
So, yeah, do we have any questions about files on Chromebook?
Sometimes people ask about file types, don't they, Jess? So you can store any sort of file on a Chromebook. So whether it's a Word document, PowerPoint, Excel from the Windows suite, whether it's obviously the Google Suite Docs, and the other sort of downloadable files. Everything except what we call exe files, everything except executable files can come down to a Chromebook and can obviously also be stored in Google Drive.
Right. You can also convert your Word, Excel, and such docs to be Google files if that makes them easier to work with on Chromebooks. So that's all very easy to do. Oh, and Google thought I was speaking to her. So, all right. Again, feel free to ask questions at any time in the chat. And otherwise, we'll move on to the next session, which is which apps we can use on a Chromebook. This is always a popular topic.
Yeah, someone just popped a question actually. So I'll just, before we go on to apps, someone said, not sure about files, but what's this one?
Let's see. Oh, okay. Can you plug in a hard drive to a Chromebook?
Yeah, you can. If it's got a USB connection, you can plug external devices into a Chromebook. I would add one restriction to that, and that is that provided, and most people watching this are probably from schools, provided your school haven't disabled USB external storage, and it is in lots of schools for various reasons disabled. One of the things I would say, I had a dear colleague of mine for many years, who I worked with for many years, for some reason insisted on saving all of their precious files on an external hard drive. And then one day they dropped it in a puddle of water, and hadn't backed it up to Google Drive. Obviously, we've got Google Drive, and you can put all your files in Google Drive, and Google Drive is there and available on lots of machines. So I think they massively regretted that move. So I would say, you've got Google Drive, it's got lots of storage space, pop your things in Google Drive as a rule. But can you plug a drive into Chromebooks? Yes, of course you can. Plug a memory stick in, plug an external hard drive in, plug a SD card in to bring files across.
And there's another question from Amanda. Can you access your starred section of your drive? So if you want to explain maybe what that means with starred files.
Yeah, so in Google Drive, you can star files, but on the Chromebook, it doesn't show the starred files area. So we bring my screen in just to explain what Amanda's asking here. So here's my screen, here's my files again. Obviously, I can go to Google Drive. You can see my drive. I can see all the files and areas in my drive. And it shows me my shared drive, share with me, and offline files. On the web-based version, I can star files to make them easier to get to. And I actually think starring is a great way of being able to navigate through Google Drive a lot better. So if I need to use starred, I'll open up a new browser window and bring that in my Google Drive area. And then on the left-hand side here, from my Google Drive on my Chromebook, I've obviously got starred. And so when we star a file, it just means we can get to it much quicker. So I hope that helps Amanda's area. And so my answer to the question is, I would use the web-based version of Drive if I'm going to need to use some of these features like starred.
Right. And speaking of storage and Drive being our storage space for Chromebooks, someone asked about what kind of devices, what kind of Chromebooks they should be looking at in terms of storage. Does that make a difference?
Yeah, in terms of storage, certainly in the very early days of Chromebooks, obviously most things web-based. The first thing to really think about from using Chromebooks is that bulk of tools we're using web-based. Google Drive is web-based. So historically, going back a few years, everybody was always on about making bigger and bigger computers with more and more size. We don't need huge sizes. So we don't need huge amounts of onboard storage on a Chromebook. What I would say is we are seeing more and more people using a variety of different tools on Chromebooks. So we need to bear in mind that some of our apps, we'll talk about later, if we're going to use a lot of Android apps, we might want a bit more storage for that. So you think about storage is not a crucial factor. I've got a Chromebook that's got a relatively low amount of storage and it still works fine. But if you can get more storage, it's probably better. So someone is looking at deciding between an Ace and a Lenovo. And the Lenovo's got more onboard storage, which is fine if you're going to get that as part of your deal. The other thing I would say when you're thinking about looking at Chromebooks is think about the functionality you think you need to be able to use those Chromebooks. And that sometimes comes down to the students, the age of the students, what particular tools they work, if they're student devices. So the big things around, do you get touchscreen? Is touch important? Are students going to use apps that require touch like Jamboard and styluses? And the same with teacher devices as well. I very much use a keyboard when I'm using my Chromebook. I'm very much a keyboard input person. But my wife, who has got a Chromebook, she has got a stylus with a Chromebook. She uses Google Classroom. She writes on students' work on her Chromebook. She very much uses that input method. That suits the way she works, whereas the keyboard suits me. So I wouldn't be as fussed about a stylus if I was buying a Chromebook. She would never have a Chromebook without a stylus. So I think it's some down to personal use as well, isn't it?
I know a lot of teachers like that stylus for grading purposes. So yeah, those are the things to consider for meet the needs of your particular organization, or as Andy said, students and teachers might need different devices. So wonderful. Thank you for your questions, and keep them coming as we go through the apps on a Chromebook.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about, saw a little bit of apps earlier when I pressed my button, but there are effectively 4 different ways of putting what we could describe as an app onto a Chromebook. Now, we've said it all the way through this that Chromebooks are, for want of a better word, a very fast way of accessing the internet. And so with a lot of these apps, what we're really doing is accessing a tool which is maybe web-based, with sort of one exception around our Android apps. But let's share my screen, and I'm going to take you through how we add the different types of apps. So here I am on my Chromebook, and I'm going to go into my apps area. And one of the things I have on here is the web store. So this is the Chrome web store. I can bring this up. It loads in as a web page. And this is where my web-based apps live. And on the left-hand side here, we can see there's an apps area. I can go down to my apps area, and I can start to search the thousands of apps that exist for me to use on my Chrome device. So again, we get different things coming up here. Chrome Web Store. When I'm adding an app from the Chrome Web Store, so let me pick one randomly. I'll have this one might be interesting. It looks like a xylophone app, a simple digital xylophone. So maybe I've decided that I want to play the xylophone on my Chromebook. I press Add to Chrome. It just gives me a message to add it, and press Add. And then that app will be added. Now, what I'm really doing when I add an app like that is I am adding it. So, oh, there it is. There's the app now. It's down there on my device. There's a little icon for it now, the little xylophone app. But I'm adding really a link to a website. So when I click that, what will actually happen? As you can see, it will load up this little also website. Here's my xylophone, which is now making a noise through my headphones. I can sit here and play the xylophone. So we've got apps that are Chrome Web Store apps like that we can add in and put on a device to effectively make increase the icons there that on this area here. Chrome Web Store apps. That's the first app option. And when I got my first Chromebook, that was the choice. But now there's an additional different sort of app we can bring in, and those are Android apps from the Play Store. So that's why I've got Web Store and I've got Play Store. I've got both on my device. So when I go to Play Store, it brings up the Google Play Store. Now, just a big disclaimer at this point. If you're on a school-managed Chromebook, you might not have the option to add either of these apps. It might be something that your admin team are doing. So if you're on a device that's controlled by your school, you possibly can't go to either of these areas to see apps. You probably have to go and ask somebody in IT, your network manager, to add an app on your device for you. But here I am in the Play Store. It's coming on books for some reasons, but I could go back to apps. And again, I could find apps here that might be great for my Chromebook. So, and as you can see, it knows I'm on a Chromebook, so it's giving me some options here, suggesting that maybe I should use Squid. If anyone hasn't seen Squid, it's a great app for writing on touchscreen Chromebooks. So I'll press install, and this time round, because this is actually an Android app, it's going to download the app I'm just thinking, how big is Squid? Download the app from the internet. Maybe I shouldn't have done that live. Onto my device. Oh, it's going fairly quickly. So that then I've got that app on my device. Now, sometimes I get asked a big question of, well, should we go for an Android app or should we go for a web app? Because some things have both. And as a general rule, if there's a web app available, use the web app. And only really go to the Android app if one of the two scenarios, there isn't a web app, or if there's some additional functionality to the Android app that you don't get in the web app. And so the example of that would be from the teaching world, Google Jamboard. The Android app has more functionality. It's got some fancy tools in it. And Google Classroom, I talked earlier about my wife writing on her work. Google Classroom allows the Android app allows you to use a pen to input onto students' work and write on students' work. So those are two good reasons why you might download the Android app. But I've added Squid on here now, so I can press open. And again, that will make this app run. It's opening in a strange place. Let me bring it across. Here it is. It's a little note-taking app. I can make that a bit bigger. I can load up my my notes and start to draw on my notes. It's designed for handwriting as a sort of handwriting piece of paper app. And again, I can start to draw on my screen. I'm using the mouse, but I could use my touch screen to draw up on that. So we've added a Chrome app. We've added an Android app. Those are 2. If we come back to Jess's, slides, I will mention the next one. And this one is one I'm not going to demo because it is a bit more advanced, but there is a third type of way of adding apps. Chromebooks can also run something we call Linux apps. Now, I'll be very truthful. We're doing a beginner workshop. Those are quite technical apps often. But sometimes when you can't find a Chrome Web Store app and then you can't find a Play Store app, your third choice, it's almost in order of preference here, might be, well, we'll use a Linux app instead. And so a Linux app, it's just another way of putting an app onto device. And again, it allows it to expand that Chrome ecosystem a bit further.
Great.
And then the final one, should we ask in the chat, Jess?
Yes. Can we please know what extensions you're familiar with, or even what's your favorite extension that you know about, which are available in the Chrome Web Store?
So shall we explain what Chrome extensions are? While people are writing in the chat, maybe any extensions they're using in their school. Chrome extensions are almost like little tiny apps that sit in the background when you're using the internet, when you're using the Chrome browser. And they often bring some sort of additional functionality to the Chrome browser. So sometimes you want it to have an additional feature that it doesn't have itself. And so you might add Chrome extension to bring some additional functionality in. And so we're going to talk about Chrome extensions, and I see people are adding some in already. So let's have a quick look at what people are saying there, Jess, before we go on to that. So Phil has said Moat and Screencastify. So Moat is a great Chrome extension for voice annotations. Screencastify, a screen recording tool. Quite a few coming in now. CBS Primary.
Yeah, so Seesaw, Loom, Screencastify again. Yep, those different screen recording tools, which are great and alternatives, especially if you're until that recording feature comes out in Chromebooks, but also do different things as well. Oh yes, and Caroline likes Edpuzzle. Yay! Another great video extension, or making videos interactive.
So I'll just share my screen and I'll show you how we get a Chrome extension. So Chrome extensions live in the Chrome Web Store, which is also the place we went for our web apps. And as you can see up here, we've got extensions in the menu. So when we go to that Chrome Web Store, we add the apps. We've also got extensions. So I'll pick one I like, which is, what shall I do today? I'll do Equatio. For any maths or science teachers watching today, Equatio allows me to add maths symbols into Google Forms, Google Docs, Google Slides, Jamboard, across the range of Google tools. So if I'm struggling with maths symbols, Equatio is a good way around that. So there it is. Actually, I've already added it, so I've previously put it on, but I can search for my extensions here. I can find the one I want. When I go to this page, I can press Add to Chrome. This one says Remove because I've already added it, but I can press Add to Chrome and I can bring those extensions in. So that is adding extensions onto my device. Jess, should we have a look at any questions before we move on?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of recap. So what Andy just shared there was, first of all, the Chromebook Web Store web apps, kind of what he said, like an order of preference, if you will. If you can't find your apps there, you can look in the Google Play Store. The Linux apps are something that's a bit more advanced on the tech side. And then, as he just showed, there are extensions that are coming out all the time. Amazing developers are producing those. So there are millions or billions, Andy, of extensions out there. I'm not sure.
Certainly millions of extensions out there, I would say. And one thing that you can bear in mind is that there is a rating system in the Chrome Web Store. And so it tells you how many people are using it and what the star rating is. So, for example, we take something like Equatio that I have on my screen. It's got 4 million users and 598 people have rated it 5-star. That gives me some confidence it's probably going to do what it says it does. It's probably a reliable app. If an app's got no stars or 1-star rating and 4 users, it's probably not as either you're very early on that app or it's not as popular as useful.
And can you just explain the difference between the App Hub and the web store?
So as you can imagine, all of those ways of getting apps brought us thousands of apps. And that's difficult as a teacher. It's difficult to work out, well, what do I need? How do I use, I want to teach maths. What tools should I use? And so recognizing that this was a problem for people to find the right apps, Google created something called the Chromebook App Hub. And the Chromebook App Hub is a dedicated website designed to help teachers find the apps that they need to support teaching and learning. And so I'm going to just share my screen in, and I'll show you what the Chromebook App Hub looks like and the sort of tools that are available on it. So here's the Chromebook App Hub. And it, again, he's going to mention things that we've already seen in those two areas, Android apps and Chrome extensions and web apps. But this time around, this is filtered for teachers. And so Google have worked with a team of teachers to find the most appropriate apps. So different ways of searching it. We can come to the apps page. We come to the apps page. And again, we can, at this point, search by age range, by category, by the pricing, if there's some are free, some are paid. But we can also do it by date and so on. So we can really sort of start to filter down and find appropriate apps for us to use as a teacher. So they're listed by app. And at the top, there's also something called ideas. And idea sparks are almost lesson ideas where teachers have put in different ways of using the apps or the ways they're using the apps within their school on their Chromebooks. So let's imagine, for example, I am a geography teacher. That's what I was, a geography teacher. So if I come to this area and I select geography, it sort of filters me and starts to show me some of the tools and apps I could use as a geographer with my students using Chromebooks. Again, this links to a range of different apps and different pieces that I might want to use with my students. So if you are interested in trying to find educational apps, Chromebook App Hub is probably the best place to start that journey. Jess.
Yeah, super. Thank you. And we have, as you can see here on my screen, those different filters that Andy mentioned are quite useful. And also we've put a link in the chat if you want to explore the App Hub yourself. There's also a question that came in from, I don't know, you have to tell us the name that we should use for this, but does the same process apply for adding extensions to the admin panel of Workspace?
Yeah, so if you're using a school device, very often the school will control the apps that are going to be on that device. So some of you may not have access to Play Store, Chrome Web Store, etc., because of that reason. And so it is a different, it's a similar but slightly different process if you're using the admin console. But people who have access to the admin console have the ability to take an app. Let's imagine Moat as an example, because someone mentioned it earlier, and they have the option to go into the admin console, to go to devices, select the app that they want to have. So let's say Moat, select the group of students it's going to go to and push that to everybody at once. And so rather than individual users having to download the apps, next time the user is on their Chromebook, a student, maybe we decide all of year 7 are going to have Moat. Next time they're on their Chromebook, they're in year 7, Moat will automatically install. We're not going to focus in on the admin console in today's session, but we are doing some focused admin sessions where we talk about how to push apps to large groups of students. So
and we'll we'll share that link at the end of the session to all of these other similar sessions, and we have a few about managing Chromebooks and also the admin.
We now know that person's called Nicola, so I hope that answers Nicola's question.
and yeah, Nicola's the admin. So yes, definitely, please come to our admin sessions. Any other questions? Please feel free to put them in the chat. And that's it. It can be questions about any part of Chromebooks, but of course we've just talked about apps.
I think there was a question a little bit earlier. I'm going to just find. Oh yeah, somebody asked this question, Jess.
Oh, thank you. I missed that one. Sorry, Caroline. Yeah. So, can you use Loom on Chromebooks?
Yeah, so Loom's a Chrome extension. If we share my screen, and I think I've got Loom turned on, he says already. But if we just come back to my screen, so Loom is a Chrome extension that we can use for screen recording. And so it captures the screen. I'm just thinking, yes, I've got it. It's already there, look. So talking about Chrome extensions, they always appear as little buttons on the top right-hand side. So just like the process before, go to the Chrome Web Store, find the Loom extension. Let's go that. Take you to the root. So go to the Chrome Web Store, which I can just go back on my thing here. Once you've gone to the Chrome Web Store, you can search. So if you know the name of the app you're going for, search straight for it, Loom. And Loom is a really nice tool for screen recording because, and here it is here, Loom for Chrome. And again, it knows already got it, so I've added it, but we'd click it and press Add to Chrome to add that in. And Loom's nice because it captures the screen when it's screen recording, like we saw with the inbuilt one. But when I click on Loom, what's been signing in again? When I click on Loom and sign back in again, I have to sign in now to my Loom account. Then what I'm able to do is I'm able to record my screen, and at the same time also it records me. And I can be in a little circle on the screen. And so if let's imagine you're working with students and you want to have yourself on the screen, you can use Loom for that. So I click on Loom, I've signed in now. I think maybe Loom doesn't like the fact that I'm also live on a video call. It might not decide to play. No, Loom's not playing. So it may be the fact that I'm also streaming out on the internet as to why not. But I'd normally click on Loom, it would record my screen, it would record me in a little window, and again I can be there talking to students through slides of what they're going to do, saves the recording, and I can then share that with my students. So that is Loom without going into too much detail about that. Jess, where are we moving on to next?
And what you just said also made me think about how many extensions and different apps also integrate into things like Google Classroom. So a lot of times when you've made those screen recordings or that Edpuzzle video, you can just easily link that to your classroom. And there are different ways to do that within each of the apps, but it's a really handy integration that lots of the different apps have made. So you can just upload it right to Classroom, share it with your students directly. So if there are any other questions that you have, please continue to put them in the chat. Thank you, everyone, for your lovely questions. And our next session, or our final session final part of this entire session, is all about accessibility features. I know Chromebooks are constantly iterating and improving in so many ways, and there have been some features that have been improved upon this year.
Yeah, so there's just a range of tools we can help tailor our Chromebooks to meet the needs of the students and the users. And in fact, I use some of these tools. So we'll introduce the tools first. So text to speech. So this is the ability for the Chromebook to speak what it's seeing. And so we have two different tools that work in that way. Chromevox that speaks everything, and Select to Speak that speaks when you select areas of the screen. So this effectively reads back to the student or the user the text that they're seeing on the screen. So we can imagine why there might be some people who may want to use that. The next accessibility tool is the ability to change the display on our Chromebook. And so depending on the visibility issues of the user, we might need to use high contrast mode to flip our colors, the screen magnifiers to make areas of the screen larger, or the dock magnifier, which is just a way of zooming one area of the screen. And so we can do that again to manage that resolution, to manage that text size. So if someone's got visibility issues, we can turn those features on. Next set of tools is we can change the way in which people input information into the Chromebook. So sticky keys avoids us having to use things like Shift. It enables us to fix keys in certain formats. We can also use an on-screen keyboard. And there's also, and this is one that I really love, and I'll show you when we come to look at my device in a moment, but dictation allows us to voice type into anything. So a lot of people know that you can voice type into Google Docs, but actually on a Chromebook, we can voice type anywhere on the web, into a form, into the URL bar, anywhere we can place a cursor, we can dictate. And I'll show you how to set that up in just a moment, because it is really useful. Even for me, I type that way a lot.
And I just need to mention, of course, I'm sure your brains are already going crazy with all the ways this can apply to all students, not just those with additional needs. Also, if you would like to see any of these in more detail, there are some lovely videos on the Chromebook YouTube channel. So that's what we're featuring here. So just go to the Google Chromebook YouTube channel and you can see all of those different how-to videos.
Yeah, and then we can change the mouse. We can use a large mouse cursor, have it highlighted, change the automatic clicks. And again, I'll demo that in just a second. I'll show you where the settings for that live, should you want to change your cursor. So, audio options on a Chromebook. We can choose to play the audio through all speakers. Some people prefer a mono speaker, and we can also play particular sounds on startup. So again, we can use audio to indicate what's going on a Chromebook. We can tailor those settings. And then if you've got students who need to, it's possible to plug, Chromebooks are compatible with Braille devices. So if we need to, we can plug a Braille reader into a Chromebook, and then via the Chromebox, they can read what's on the screen using the Braille device. So Chromebooks are compatible with Braille devices. So we're going to pop over to my screen and talk about how we turn on and get started with any of these accessibility tools. The very first time you want to use an accessibility tool, you need to turn on accessibility in the settings area. So I'm on my device, I'm going down to the bottom right-hand side and I'm clicking on the clock. And I'm going to the settings cog to bring up my settings area. And so this will load up my settings area. And here it is. And now I can, in the settings area, scroll all the way down to the bottom and go into advanced. And in advanced, there is an option here which says, always show accessibility options in the system menu. You can turn that on. So once you've done that, you only have to do that once. That means now, mine's already turned on, I can click bottom right. And again, I've now got an accessibility icon here. So rather than having to come back to the systems menu in future, I can go there to accessibility and I can start to see turn the accessibility tools on and off from my systems menu. So rather than having to spend time in settings, I can just turn them on and off on the bottom right hand side. And so down here, we can see the ones I just mentioned. So things like Chromebooks, select speak, dictation, there they all are. And that's there, they're there because I've turned it on in this area. And so once you turn those on, you can then start to access them from the menu down there. I mentioned earlier on that I got dictation turned on. So if you look, dictation's already ticked here. It's turned on for me. I use this accessibility tool a lot. And that means I can click on any text field. So I'll go to the settings field here, click on it, press my little dictation keyboard. And what it does now is it enters that what I just spoke into the area. It's still going, so I'll turn it off. But I can use the dictation tool just to dictate into any text field I like. So I really do find it quick to use dictation tools. And so that's the settings area. That's adding an accessibility tool, and that's adding accessibility tool and using that. The other thing we can do in the setting accessibility tools is further down the bottom in additional settings, we've got large mouse cursor, mono audio. Let's look at large mouse cursor. Oops. We've got it turned on. That's what I've got on my screen right now. I find it really useful, particularly when I'm demoing things and working with students or teachers, to have a great big mouse cursor turned on. So I've got a great big green cursor. And when I move my cursor, this red circle comes on. That's highlight mouse cursor. That's that feature there, so that I can see really clearly on my screen where my cursor has gone. So it's really useful if you're going to be training. Maybe some of you are training students to use devices, to have those features turned on as well. And officially accessibility tools, but just useful for all users of Chromebooks to have those. And that's accessibility settings. Jess, have we any questions coming on that?
Yeah, I think we've asked people to put any questions on accessibility or anything else we've talked about in the chat. And meanwhile, we can also just kind of review here with this GIF and lovely slide explanation of how to get started. So that 1, 2, 3, quite quite an easy way to optimize and customize your device for your learners, which is why it's really ideal. Andy, and tell me if you think differently, but to have one-to-one Chromebooks in schools, like the kind of goal.
Well, one thing that is about Chromebooks is that once you've turned on a feature, it follows you around. And so actually, whether you one-to-one or using device for trolley, it doesn't really matter. Because if a student has turned on dictation and goes to get a different Chromebook, that setting, it remembers them, it binds that to their Google account. And it then means that their dictation will be turned on the next Chromebook they have. So I worked in a school where all the students had Chromebooks. As part of our reviews of students with particular needs, we would go through, we would work out what features they needed access to. Often we would go and do that settings task with them. We would go through, we would turn it on, we would check it works with them. And then we would know that when they pick up another device from a trolley, or if they're signing into a Chromebox, that those settings will be with them. So one of the really nice things is the portability of the accessibility tools.
Yeah, that's a really awesome feature, and very good to know that travels around with them. Also, I was just thinking of one of the problems some are facing now with all of these new updates coming out, and knowing that sometimes it's good also to remind your students to restart their devices, because Chromebooks automatically update when they're restarted. And so they will automatically get those rollouts too, which makes them super easy to use. I think we have some questions coming in.
Yeah, we do. First one is, let's have a quick look what there is there coming in. First question, Jess.
Can a Chromebook work with a flat screen board for a whole class display?
So the short answer is plug it in and try it, is my short answer. So in fact, right now I'm actually using my Chromebook with a display to my right. My display is a touchscreen. I can use that in that way. So most of the time, the answer to that question is yes. I previously used to teach in a school that we had interactive smart whiteboards. I would plug my Chromebook in. There was a USB plug as well, and that would allow me then to write on the interactive whiteboard, and my Chromebook would pick that up on things like Jamboard. So if I was using the Scribe app or the Jamboard app, I could work that way. But it is down to the individual sort of board, and I don't know what boards Janet's using, so I can't guarantee that it would work, but I would say it should work. Plug it in and see what happens. It certainly worked for me the times I've used it.
Sometimes some additional software might be required based on the type of hardware that you're plugging it into.
Yeah, and there are some Chrome extensions for some of the tools, but not always. So I can't guarantee all compatibility.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And Jane wants to know, can you change the color of your cursor?
You can indeed change the color of your cursor. I will just, if you want to share my screen, I will just show you how to do that. I'm already in settings, actually. I started typing there already, cheated slightly. So in the settings area, you can put in just cursor, and as you see, cursor color is an option. And so let's find where that is on that screen, cursor color. And so here it is on that screen. I've got large mouse cursor turned on. We talked about that earlier. Cursor color, I've gone for green because it's my favorite color. You've got red, yellow, green, cyan, blue, magenta, and pink as your choices on a Chromebook. If you wanted a different color, you'd have to use an extension. So if you really want some of the color not there, maybe I'll change it as a demo. Shall I go for magenta? What's that like? That's okay, but I'm going to go back to green, and I'm going to stick with my green cursor color. So that you can is the simple answer.
Not one to change, you are.
I think I like green as my cursor color.
Well, I do have to say this lovely, rainbow of options is represented here too, with your lovely background, which is now available for download for everyone, right?
Yeah, on the Google for Education website, that you can have the 10th birthday background on your Chromebook. And actually, it's probably good. There probably is a question there, which logically follows on. How do I change the background on my Chromebook? So you right click, and remember we talked about this earlier, right click is the 2-finger click on the screen, and you get some options coming up here, and set wallpaper. Now, if you're on a school Chromebook, the school can sometimes set your Chromebook for you, your background for you. So you might not have this option, but again, here I can go into various options, and I can see the different, there's some set options here. Imaginary, this is a new set. I quite like these. So if I want to change my background to a melon talking to a small character, I can make that choice. And again, so there's options in there from a default set, or if I want to, I can go to the images area, bring it back on again, go to the image upload area and bring my own images in as well. So it is possible to change the background on your Chromebook.
Right.
Any other questions there, Jess?
And just going off of that, some schools use this as a way to customize it with the school logo, of course, or that even a year group specification.
And if you want to know how to make everyone in your school have the same background, that's the admin session. You can come and join us for an admin session to find out about that.
Yeah, and please feel free to ask more questions in the chat. But since you mentioned those other sessions, Andy, do you want to explain what you mean?
Yeah, so lots of other ways you can learn more about the whole ecosystem that is Google for Education, where you've obviously found this webinar, so you must have therefore been to our website, but at bit.ly/GFE UK events, you can find out about the whole range of webinars that we're running to support teachers, not only about using Chromebooks, but about using Workspace for Education, hear from some of our Google reference schools in our show and tell webinars, find out more about the admin console and how to manage fleets of Chromebooks, all through our webinars coming up this year.
Yeah, wonderful. And the link is in the chat, so feel free to register for those. And what's nice when you register is you can actually tell us what you'd like to get out of the session. So we have a look at those questions and ideas beforehand so we can contour each session to meet your needs.
Don't forget, there's also the wonderful website that is teachfromanywhere.google, and it's a hub for teachers to help them develop their skills, originally developed for remote learning, but how we can use, wherever we may be forced to teach from, we can use the tools to best advantage. So the Teach From Anywhere Hub, a great starting place to learn more about Google.
And that's also great for families. There's a link within that with tons of translations in all, I don't know how many languages, Andy, you would know better, but a lot.
And then, of course, always has been around is the Google for Education Teach Center. And the Teach Center is focused for teachers on learning more about using Chromebooks, about using Google tools within their lessons. So there are specific courses you can work through on each of the tools. You want to know more about Classroom or Forms. You can also undertake the exams, so Google Certified Educator Level 1 and Level 2, to show and demonstrate your proficiency in using Google. And then above that, we have our programs. So, for example, myself and Jess are both Google Certified Innovators, the Google Certified Trainer Program, and the Google Certified Coach Program. So if you want to really up your levels, you can work your way all the way up to Innovator status.
Yes, goals. And let's look back for any other questions. We're happy to answer any questions you have, but otherwise we'll also pop this link in the chat for you to give us some feedback. We'd love to hear what you liked and what we could do better for the next time, because we'll be doing these Chromebook sessions monthly. So again, please check out and register on the bit.ly GFE UK events link so we can see you next or in another month, or send this to your colleagues to come if they weren't able today, and if they weren't able to today, sorry. And also, if you want to watch these sessions back at any point, they live on YouTube at the same link, so you can always check out a previous session there.
Wonderful. Well, I think it just leaves me to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Jess, for hosting and bringing the questions in. I hope you found today's session useful, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.